Hansen with Clarion. I'm here at European Utility Week. I'm joined by David Green with IHS Markit. Welcome,
Thank
David.
you.
So let's start out by talking a little bit about why does AMI make a good case study for IoT adoption?
I think utilities don't necessarily realize that AMI is a really good case study for adoption because IoT is often seen as a scary thought. That you have to involve IT, you have to involve finance, it's a big project, there's so many applications, and sometimes it's difficult to work out which way to go forwards. At the same time, the paradox is that there's over 700 million smart meters already installed worldwide across electricity, gas and water, and that's actually growing at 380,000 endpoints every single day. And if you define IoT as a network of connected devices and the fact that you have data and you're going to analyze something and do something with that data, AMI is an IoT application. So I think it makes a good case study because it's right now probably the biggest single IoT network in number of connected endpoints that utilities actually have, and they understand and they're using.
Interesting. So what are the key factors in a good IoT solution?
I think a good one, let me cover what I think is bad first and then we can say what is good. So I think when you think of IoT in a bad way, like I said, it becomes a kind of panic phrase and you get a whole load of inaction. So first of all, people can see it as a connection only issue. So they get worried about individual technological choice between do I go for RF mesh, do I go for LoRa, Sigfox, NB-IoT. There's a lot of different, this is just the AMI side, but there's a lot of different choices. And they see it as a straight choice. And one will be the right choice and will win, and everything else will fade away. And that's not necessarily the case. When you worry about that, you then get to the second factor, which is kind of a paralysis of choice, if you like. They have so many options, they have so many applications, and then you open it up to be we could also use the data in distribution automation. That's actually even more scary, the bigger it gets. So people worry about it. A good way of thinking about IoT, so IHS Markit defined 4 pillars of IoT. So we have the collect, the first C, which in AMI is the smart meter itself, but it's the device on the edge measuring something. You then have connect or connectivity, which is how you are transporting that data from the device to further up in the stream. Then you have the third is compute. So how are you then analyzing? Where are you storing that data and how are you analyzing it? Cloud computing is a big deal right there for the moment. And then finally, the fourth C is create. What are you actually going to do with the data? How are you going to create an actionable insight from that data? If you think about it, arguably the biggest area of spend is on the collect, but the biggest area of value is on create. How are you actually going to use it? So again, applying that to AMI, it's so optimized around meter to cache. They kind of broke through that because they didn't even think about it, right? They're spending on the total solution to get meter to cache process sorted, not just, oh, we need to spend on this hardware and this connection, and then we'll worry about how to deal with it later.
So they knew in advance what they were doing.
Exactly.
What it was for.
And a really good IoT solution is only as strong as the weakest of those 4 pillars.
Okay. So how did AMI break through being a connection-only problem into being a true IoT solution?
I think it's a good question. I don't think it's necessarily a conscious decision that people took. I think the single biggest deal is they realized that not one single connection technology was going to win. So there is no, the latest and the greatest buzzword at the moment is NB-IoT, for example, which will take a portion of the market, but it will not dominate, it will not win. And once you realize that, if we look, I think we analyzed all the unit shipments of smart meters from 2017 to 2023, and we saw that kind of 17% was mobile read, but that's declining. The rest is AMI solutions. There's a huge proportion, up like 30% plus, which is broadband PLC because of China for electricity meters. Everything else is split all over the place. There's RF mesh, there's low power wireless, there is NB-IoT, there's cellular, traditional cellular. No one single solution wins out. It's actually more important to consider the cost per endpoint and the business case than it is the technical side of the solution. So I think once people realize that, and particularly once they are adopted maybe more turnkey solutions, metering as a service, for example, where they're outsourcing that risk to the vendor, it allows people to push through that, and they don't even perceive the technology so much anymore because I'm a utility and I want my data. That's your problem, right? Yeah. So I think that's what's kind of broken them through that and helped the adoption.
Okay. So what will be the key difference between adoption in electric utilities versus, say, water utilities for AMI and IoT?
I think the one big similarity is that everything is always justified off the meter to cash process. Everything has to be justified off that. It's the easiest, clearest ROI for the system, and that's kind of the foot in the door, right? That's what gets you going on adoption of AMI. Where it then diverges, there are a lot more uses for the data in electricity. You can use that in a lot more ways in the future. We think on all AMI spending right now for electricity, for electric AMI, around 58 billion to be spent over the next kind of 6 years. I think 85% is on the hardware, 9% is on the connection technologies. 6% now is going to be on the compute and create elements that I mentioned earlier. But with electricity, you can do that for AMI, for meter to cash, and then you can come back and say, we're now going to add this analytic application, we're now going to add this, we're now going to use the data in another way. So it's very generational. You're not going to get an electric utility who goes from basic meters and no smarts at all to a full-on smart city in one deployment, right? Whereas water, maybe you don't get that, but you do get bigger jumps because the data uses are maybe slightly less, but it can therefore be optimized into a kind of turnkey solution more easily. So we're seeing the curve for that is around 24 billion to be spent on that over the next 6 years compared to the 58 for electricity. But the pace of adoption starts to really ramp up. It really fits a certain profile of utility to get that AMI as a service solution. So I think those are the key differences, but again, the one big similarity is optimize the solution for the clearest ROI, get some traction with that, and then you can start layering the more IoT applications and the huge variety of applications that we see different companies offer.
So it's really kind of an individual utility decision of how much they want, much they want to invest.
Absolutely. Utilities are always going to be very slow moving, I guess, cautious utilities. They're always poised to be second to the market with something. They don't necessarily want to be first and take the risk, but they want to adopt the new technology. But you have to help them through the process. There has to be this generational approach, particularly for electricity.
Okay, well thanks for joining me at European Utility Week.